It was late April when I noticed it. Noticed her, I guess. At first, it felt like one of those glitches your brain plays on you. Like seeing a shadow move out of the corner of your eye, or thinking you hear your name in a crowded room. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the harder it became to ignore. It started on my evening runs. There's this long, winding trail near my house that cuts through an old neighborhood and loops around a small lake. I run it almost every evening after work, or right around sunset. It's usually quiet, just a few joggers or people walking their dogs. But one night I spotted someone standing by the lake. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there, staring at the water. She was wearing a white sweatshirt, the kind that hangs too loose, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Maybe she was just another local getting some air right, but something about the way she stood felt off. Her posture was too still, like she was balancing on a tightrope. I didn't think much of it at the time. I passed her, kept running, and by the time I circled back, she was gone. The second time I saw her, she was in the exact same spot. Same clothes, same posture, staring at the lake like it was the most interesting thing in the world. But this time, I approached her. I called out, "Hey," just to be friendly. She didn't respond. Her head didn't move, but I swear her shoulders stiffened. Like she heard me, but didn't want to turn around. I thought she didn't want to be bothered, so I just kept running. By the third night, I started to get curious. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe that she'd finally look up, or that she'd be doing something other than standing there like a statue. But when I got to the lake, she wasn't alone. There was a guy standing about 20 feet from her, throwing rocks into the water. He looked like a typical college dude. Baseball cap, hoodie, probably out with friends. But here's the thing. When he skipped a rock, I noticed the reflection. His reflection. I didn't see hers. I slowed down, squinting at the water. The surface was perfectly still except for the ripples from the rocks and the guy's shadow. But where she was standing, there was nothing. No shadow, no reflection. It was like she wasn't even there. I must have slowed down too much because the guy glanced at me, gave a nod like, "What's up?" and then walked off. She didn't move. Not a single inch. I didn't stop to think about it. I just kept running, my stomach twisting into knots. The next morning, I couldn't let it go. I went back to the lake in broad daylight, thinking maybe it was just the light or my own tired brain messing with me. The spot where she'd been standing was empty, of course, but when I walked closer, I noticed footprints in the dirt, barefoot. They were pointed toward the water, deep enough to suggest she'd been standing there for a long time. I looked out at the lake, and that's when I saw it again. Not her, just her reflection, alone on the water. It moved slowly, pacing the shoreline. There was no one there, just the distorted shape of a woman in a white sweatshirt. I backed up so fast I nearly tripped. By the time I looked again, it was gone. I don't run that trail anymore, but sometimes, when I drive past the lake at dusk, I'll catch a glimpse of someone standing there, staring at the water. I don't stop to check. I've learned my lesson. I've tried explaining it to myself all day, but nothing adds up. This happened last weekend. I live in San Jose, California, but my friend convinced me to drive out to Big Sur with him. It's stunning during the day, but at night it's a whole different story. Anyway, we got there kind of late, around 8 p.m. The plan was to park near Bixby Bridge, one of those spots everyone takes Instagram pics at, and just hang out. My friend wanted to get some moody night photos. I went along because, why not? So we're out there, parked at a little turnout near the bridge. It's really dark. My friend was messing around with his camera, and I was just sitting on the guardrail, scrolling on my phone. That's when I noticed something weird. There was this car, parked maybe 50 feet down the road from us. I didn't think much of it at first. People stop there all the time. But it had its hazards on, which felt a little odd. Usually people just pull over, take their pics, and leave. But this car, it was just sitting there, lights blinking, no one getting out. "Hey, you see that?" I said to my friend. He looked up from his camera and shrugged. Probably someone broke down. "Yeah, but why aren't they doing anything?" My friend didn't care. He was too busy trying to get his shot of the bridge, so I let it go. But I couldn't stop looking at the car from time to time. Something about it just didn't feel right. A few minutes passed, and then the hazard stopped blinking. The car didn't move, though, just sat there in the dark. That's when I noticed the driver's side door was open. Not all the way, just a crack, like someone had gotten out but didn't fully close it behind them. I was starting to get major bad vibes. "Dude, we should probably go," I said to my friend. I was about to argue when I saw someone walking down the road toward us. I could barely make them out at first, just a silhouette. But as they got closer, I realized they weren't walking normally, like they were struggling to move. I said, "Yo, I'm serious, let's go." My friend finally looked up and said, "Well, what the hell?" The person kept coming, slow and unsteady, until they were maybe 20 feet away. That's when we both realized they weren't wearing any shoes. Their feet were bare, and they were dragging one of them like it was injured. My friend called out, "Hey, you okay?" No response. The person stopped. That's when I noticed something that made me sick. Their clothes were soaked, not like damp from the ocean air, but dripping, like they'd just climbed out of the water. And their face, I couldn't see it clearly, but it looked wrong. Pale and puffy, like, I don't know, like they'd been underwater for too long. I didn't wait to figure out what was going on. I grabbed my friend and practically shoved him toward the car. "Get in, we're leaving." He didn't argue. We scrambled into the car and peeled out of there. As we drove past that person, they didn't move. We didn't stop driving until we were back in Carmel, where there were streetlights and people around. My friend tried to calm down, saying it was probably just some weirdo, but I could tell he was freaked out too. I haven't been back to Big Sur since, and probably never will. Whatever that was, it didn't feel right. If anyone's seen something similar out there, let me know. I need to know I'm not crazy. I don't think I'll ever forget the storm from last week. It wasn't the wind or the rain that got to me, though. It was what showed up after. I live in a small house on the edge of our neighborhood that butts up against the woods. My backyard basically fades into a wall of trees. On clear nights, you can hear coyotes howling or owls calling out. It's usually pretty peaceful, but during storms, the whole area transforms. The wind howls through the trees, and the sound of branches creaking is so loud it feels like the woods are alive. The storm started late, around 11 p.m. It came out of nowhere, honestly. One second I was watching TV, and the next, lightning was lighting up the whole living room like a strobe. I remember stepping outside to move the trash cans and seeing how fast the clouds were swirling, like they were being sucked into something above the trees. The power went out around midnight. I lit some candles and sat by the window to watch the rain. The storm was mesmerizing. Constant lightning with barely any thunder. I didn't notice anything strange. It was just rain and wind, the kind of storm you sleep through. But then, during one of the lightning flashes, I saw something. It was just past the tree line. I thought maybe it was a deer or another animal at first. The shape was dark and hard to make out in the rain, but the more I stared, the less it looked like an animal. It wasn't moving like one. It was standing still, almost rigid. My brain kept telling me it was just a trick of the light, maybe a weird shadow from the trees. It wasn't running or walking, there was no movement. It was just there. It was tall, much taller than any person, and its head, I don't even know if it had one. It was like the neck stretched up into nothing, like it had been erased. I tried convincing myself I wasn't actually seeing it, that my eyes were playing tricks in the chaos of the storm, but I couldn't look away. I kept waiting for it to move again, to do something that would prove it wasn't real. And then the rain stopped. Just like that. One second it was pounding against the windows, and the next, silence. No wind, no rain, just the creak of trees swaying. I looked back out the window, and it was gone. I should have felt relieved, but I didn't. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it out into the yard, thinking maybe I could spot whatever it was. But when I turned the light toward the side of the house, the beam hit something. It wasn't clear what at first, but the light caught these reflective patches like animal eyes. But no, they weren't spaced like a deer's or anything natural. They were too high and too far apart, almost like windows on a building. Before I could process what I was seeing, the lights blinked out. Not like they moved or disappeared, just gone. The flashlight flickered in my hand, and I suddenly realized how cold it had gotten. I turned off the flashlight and stepped back, trying to figure out what to do. Call someone? Who? The police? And say what? I think there's something tall staring at me in the rain. Yeah, right. They'd probably check me for drugs before they looked outside. The storm kicked back up not long after, and I spent the rest of the night sitting in the middle of the living room, far from any windows. When the sun finally came up, I grabbed my boots and walked out to the tree line, trying to prove to myself it was just my imagination. The ground was soggy, covered in puddles, but there, just beyond the first line of trees, I found something. Footprints. They were deep, like someone had been standing there for hours, but they weren't shaped like feet. They were long, with clawed impressions at the tips, and each step was spaced way too far apart for a person. I haven't gone outside after dark since then. I don't even look out the windows at night. And if there's another storm, might be spending it in a hotel. I need to share this because I honestly don't know what to do. It's been messing with my head all day. This isn't one of those ghost under my bed kind of stories. This feels different, real, too real. So here's what happened. I'm not some tech guru or anything, but I have a habit with random Wi-Fi names. You know, those goofy ones like FBI surveillance van or pretty fly for a Wi-Fi. My phone auto-connects to my own network, but I still check the list sometimes for fun, especially when I can't sleep. Weird habit, I know. Last night I was scrolling through TikTok, procrastinating on life, when I noticed something weird. My neighbor's Wi-Fi, which has always been named Mendoza Fam-2.4 gigahertz, suddenly changed to Help Me Please-Unit 2. It threw me off. Not because of the name itself, people change their Wi-Fi names, but because I know the Mendoza family. They're old school, like hardcore Facebook boomer vibes old. The kind of people who still ask if TikTok is that Twitter app. I stared at the screen, and for some reason, I couldn't shake the unease. Help me, please? What kind of Wi-Fi name is that? I told myself it was probably their kid messing around. They've got a teenage son who's into gaming, and this seemed like the kind of edgy thing a bored teenager might do. Still, it felt off. I brushed it off and went to bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to this soft ping sound. My phone was going off with random notifications. Stuff like app updates, spam emails, whatever. But then I noticed something else. My Wi-Fi connection had dropped, which never happens. My router's rock solid. Annoyed, I went to reconnect. And that's when I saw it again. Help me please, Unit 2. Only now the signal was stronger than before. But my first thought, maybe my phone was glitching, or maybe the signal was just bouncing weirdly off the walls. I didn't want to wake up my parents, so I decided to ignore it. But as soon as I put my phone down, I heard tapping. Not the usual house-settling noises, but it had like a rhythm, like knuckles on glass. It was coming from the living room. My brain was running a mile a minute. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, that I was just overthinking a random noise. But something about that tapping, it wasn't random. It had a weird pattern. 3 slow taps, a pause, then 3 faster ones. Almost like Morse code. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and tiptoed out. The house was dead silent, except for my parents' faint snores down the hall. The tapping stopped. When I reached the living room, everything looked normal. No windows open, no shadows lurking in corners. But then I looked at our front door. The Wi-Fi router sits on a shelf near it, and that's when I noticed something. The signal light was blinking in the exact same rhythm as the tapping I'd heard. Slow, slow, slow. Pause. Fast, fast, fast. I don't know why, but I felt this wave of nausea hit me. Like actual physical nausea. My gut was screaming at me to just turn around and go back to bed, but my dumbass decided to check the router settings. Maybe someone was hacking us? I pulled up the admin page on my phone, and everything looked normal. Same devices connected, same settings, except for one thing. Under the list of connected devices, there was a new one. No name, no brand, just a MAC address. Weird, but not super unusual, except the connection time said it had been online for 3 years. My family's had this router for 2. I was officially done. I unplugged the router, locked the doors. Maybe the system glitched. Maybe I was just tired. But when I crawled back into bed, I noticed my phone had automatically connected to Wi-Fi again. Only this time, the network name wasn't "Help Me Please Unit 2." It was "Look Behind You." I swear my heart stopped. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I wanted to turn around, but every instinct in me screamed not to. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I slowly reached for my phone, opened the camera, and flipped it to selfie mode. Nothing. Just me, wide-eyed and pale, staring at my screen. But then I noticed something in the reflection behind me. The faint outline of a face, just barely visible in the darkness. Not human, not anything. It didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. I don't remember much after that. I must have passed out because I woke up this morning in my bed, drenched in sweat. My phone was on the floor, screen cracked, and the Wi-Fi was back to normal. Mendoza Fam-2.4 gigahertz was the only network showing up. I haven't told my parents. I don't even know how to bring it up without sounding insane. But here's the thing. When I checked the router logs just now, that weird MAC address was gone. So yeah, that's my story. I don't know what I saw, or if I even saw anything at all. But one thing's for sure. I'm never checking random Wi-Fi names again. I don't usually post stuff like this or anything really, but I need to know if anyone's been through something similar. I live alone in a small apartment on the 3rd floor. It's just a 1-bedroom with thin walls and creaky floors. You know the type. Last night started normal, but it took a turn I can't stop thinking about. I got home from work around 7 p.m. My nightly routine's pretty standard. I throw on sweats, reheat whatever leftovers I've got, and binge a show or scroll through TikTok until I eventually fall asleep. The night was quiet, which is unusual, because my upstairs neighbor is a certified stomper. Dude can't walk across the floor without making it sound like an elephant parade. But last night, silence. I remember thinking, did he move out or something? Anyway, I was halfway through heating up some spaghetti when I realized my phone wasn't where I thought I left it. I swear I placed it on the kitchen counter when I walked in, but it wasn't there. Whatever, I just probably tossed it on the couch or left it in the bathroom. I didn't think much of it and just grabbed my food, plopped onto the couch, and turned on Netflix. Here's where it starts getting weird. About 30 minutes into my show, I heard something coming from the kitchen. It wasn't loud, just enough to make me pause the episode. My first thought was that the faucet might be dripping, but when I checked, everything was dry. I even double-checked to make sure I didn't accidentally leave a window open, but nope. Everything was locked tight. I shrugged it off, went back to the couch, and resumed my show. 10 minutes later, I heard it again. But now, it's not from the kitchen. It's coming from the bathroom. I'm not proud to admit it, but I just sat there, holding my breath, straining to listen. My brain was already spiraling with dumb theories. Maybe it's the pipes. Maybe it's a draft. Maybe, I don't know, something rational. I eventually worked up the nerve to check it out. The bathroom light was already on. I always leave it on because I hate stumbling around in the dark. When I peeked inside, nothing was out of place. No dripping faucet, no creaky pipes. I was convincing myself I was just being paranoid. I told myself to chill the hell out and decided to just go to bed early. Maybe I was just tired. Here's the part that still has me messed up. Around like 2 or 3 a.m., I woke up a noise. It wasn't the noise from earlier this time. It was like a shuffling sound, like fabric dragging across the floor. I couldn't bring myself to get up right away. I just laid there, staring at the ceiling, listening. The sound wasn't consistent. It would stop for a few seconds, then start again. When I finally worked up the courage to look, my bedroom door, which I always close before bed, was slightly open. Just enough to see a sliver of the dark hallway beyond it. I swear, I almost stopped breathing. I told myself, it's just the wind. The door probably didn't latch right, but as I kept staring, I noticed something in the gap. It wasn't clear. It was like a shadowy movement, like someone was standing there, barely moving their weight. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually I decided I wasn't about to just lie there and wait for something to happen. I grabbed my phone, which by the way was somehow on my nightstand, even though I don't remember me putting it there, and turned on the flashlight. I aimed it at the door, and nothing. The hallway was empty. I got up, turned on every light in the apartment, and checked every corner, every closet. Nothing. The front door was still locked, the windows were shut, and there was no sign of anyone having been there. But here's the kicker. When I went back to bed, I noticed something I can't explain. On the floor, near the foot of my bed, was a smeared footprint. Not mine. Too big to be mine. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I called in sick to work today because I can't focus on anything except trying to figure out what the hell happened. I even asked my neighbor if he heard or saw anything weird, but he said he wasn't home last night. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't know if I'm losing it or if something was really in my apartment. Either way, I'm getting new locks.